Masechet Zevaḥim Daf Vav. We are still on the subject of a korban that one slaughters shelo lishma. And we have a question. Kiperu ama sheba'u or lo kiperu? If one takes, let's say something is designated to be an asham, and then the person slaughters it, having in mind it's going to be an olah. So the law is that we continue to bring that korban, it's kosher, but the owner will have to bring yet another asham. So the question is, that first asham that is brought anyway as an asham, will it atone for the sin for which it was brought, or does it not effectuate atonement? Does it effectuate atonement, but you have to bring another one for some other reason? Or it does not bring atonement, which would make more sense why he has to bring another one. That was the question. Amar Rav Sheshet bered Rav Idi, mistabera de lo kiperu. Rav Sheshet, the son of Rav Idi, says it makes more sense to say that first one does not achieve atonement for the owner. Disa kadatach kiperu sheni lamahuba, because if you think that it does achieve atonement for that sin that he brought it for, then why would he have to bring a second one? So it must be that it does not achieve atonement. So this Rav Sheshet is saying this seems like an obvious answer. We don't even really understand the two sides of the question. Velamai lo kiperu lamahu karev. Oh, but on the other side we say, so what are you concluding? That it does not atone? If that first animal does not atone at all, then why is it being sacrificed? Just stop right there. You did the slaughtering, you had in mind a different korban, now it's not going to atone for anything, it's not going to accomplish anything. So then just stop right there and throw it out. Why are you bothering to continue sacrificing it? So that also doesn't make sense. Amar Rav Asher, Rav Shisha bered Rav Idi hachi kashyale. Rav Asher is now going to explain the question. Here is called Rav Sheshet, the son of Rav Idi. Here Rav Shisha, the son of Rav Idi, but it's the same person. He says, let me explain his question better. If you say that it does not atone, then when you slaughter it shelo lishmo, you still are going to bring it as a sacrifice from the strength of the fact that it was consecrated lishmo. And so you have this animal that was consecrated as an asham. Now someone messed up and they slaughtered it for an olah, but it is still consecrated as an asham. So it's not going to achieve atonement. And that's why you have to bring a second one. The second one comes because you need atonement. Why do you continue with the first one? Well, just from the momentum that we already started it. It was already designated. It's not a blemish that totally makes it not kosher. We can still offer it. So we'd rather not throw it out. We'd rather offer it if we're able to, so it's kosher as a sacrifice, but in fact it does not atone. That is easily explainable. But if you say that it does atone, even that first one does achieve atonement, then why in the world would you bring a second one? And so that's what he's saying. But so really, this is an answer to the question. The question is that no, it does not atone. Now, if you're wondering, well, why bring it if it doesn't atone? Well, because it was designated as such. So we'll try to fill out the designation, fulfill the designation if we can, but in fact, it does not bring any atonement. And now a similar question regarding a korban olah. We learned before that a korban olah that someone brings can atone for mitzvot aseh that he didn't do. He was supposed to sit in a sukkah, a mitzvot aseh, and he refrained from doing that. Or lots of other things that you can do, but you refrain from doing. So this is not a matter of korban hatat or asham. Those are for lo ta'aseh that one did, usually by mistake. But a mitzvot aseh that you refrain from doing, a korban olah atones for that. Good. Now, we know for sure that, let's say, korban olah is also different from a korban hatat. Korban hatat, I would have to bring korban hatat for each and every sin that I did within, unless it was all within one period of time lapse of forgetfulness, then one chatat is for that whole thing. But if I violated Shabbat by mistake and then realized during the week, I have to bring Korban Chatat for that Shabbat. If the next Shabbat I forgot again and then did the same or another melacha, I have to bring another Korban Chatat. So Korban Chatat, you have to bring another Korban Chatat for each and every episode of forgetfulness and sin. Not so for Korban Olah. If I bring Korban Olah, even if I missed an opportunity of many misvot aseh over the past 3 months, and now I bring Korban Olah for whatever reason, then it atones for all those missed opportunities of a misvat aseh. Okay, that's the law for Korban Olah. And certainly, from the time that I consecrate, I say, this is going to be my Korban Olah, any misvot aseh that I missed before that will be included in atonement. That everybody knows. The question now is, what if I consecrated a Korban on Monday, and then I didn't bring it to the Bet HaMikdash until Thursday, but in the meantime, on Tuesday, I missed an opportunity for Misvat Aseh, and on Wednesday another one. So now I bring it on Thursday. Does the Korban that I offer on Thursday, and I sprinkle the blood on Thursday, will that atone for the Misvat Aseh that I missed on Tuesday and Wednesday, or only from the time of consecration and before that, from Monday and everything until Monday, but not the things I did on Tuesday and Wednesday? That's the question. Mi amrinan, mi di dehava chatat, ma chatat kodem hafrasha in lachar hafrasha la, hafacha nameh. On the one hand, we could say the Korban Olah is similar to the Korban Chatat. Or Korban Chatat can only atone for a sin that I made before I designated it. If I go and designate a Korban Chatat, I don't know, for some reason on Monday, and then I violate by mistake, I ate some haleb on Tuesday, that Korban Chatat is not going to atone for something that I did after its designation. No, I have to sin, realize that I sinned, and only then offer a Korban Chotat. So therefore, we can say that the Korban Olah would be the same thing, and it atones for Misvot Aseh only that happened before the designation. The kodem hafrasha in lachar hafrasha la. Only that before designation, yes, it will atone for, but the Korban Olah will not atone for misvot aseh that I violated afterwards. That's one side. Or dilma la damya lechatat. The chatat al kol chet vechet ba'ele tuye chatat. V'acha kevan deika kama aseh gabe mechapera. Aseh de lachar hafrasha name mechapera. Or should we say, Korban Olah is not similar to Korban Chatat. For Korban Chatat, I have to bring another animal for each and every sin that I made. I have to bring another Korban Chatat. So certainly, if I brought a Korban Chatat for something I did before Monday, when I consecrated that, for sure that's not going to be useful for a sin that I made on Tuesday, because that's going to require a whole separate animal. And so everyone needs a separate thing. Whereas when it comes to misvot aseh, even if I have many misvot aseh that I violated, I could bring one Korban Olah to cover all of them. And therefore, just like it covers many of them that I had before the designation, consecration of the animal, so too it can cover things after the consecration, as long as it's before the avodah itself, the sprinkling of the blood. That's the main thing that will achieve atonement. So as long as it's before that, that's the two sides of the question. Let's try to answer it. From a Baraita, Atashema, V'samach v'nirsa. Pasuk in Vayikra at the beginning, talking about a Korban Olah, says that a person will place his hands on the head of the Korban Olah, and it will be accepted for him as atonement. We ask, V'chi semicha mechaperet, does semicha achieve atonement? Why is this pasuk saying, put your hand on it, do semicha, and then you get atonement? The atonement happens with the blood service. When you sprinkle the blood, as the pasuk says, for it is by the blood that makes atonement, because that is the life force, and that's what does it. So what is the pasuk coming to teach me? By saying you do semicha and that will be atonement, is teaching me she'im asa'a l'semicha sheyareh misvah ma'aleh alav hakatub ki'ilu lo kiper v'chiper. It's teaching me that if I consider the semicha to be an optional, non-essential part of the mitzvah, I brought a korban olah and I thought to myself, the main thing is bringing the animal. I had to pay for it, I had to bring it here, it's going to be slaughtered and sprinkle the blood. That's the main thing, and I skip the semicha. I make light of the semicha, and I don't do it. If that happens, if I skip the semicha, that's an example of missing a misvat aseh, misvat aseh to do semicha, and now I'm neglecting to do a semicha, to do a misvat aseh. So then, what is the status of this korban? Oh, well, this is saying if you do semicha, it will achieve atonement. So that means if you don't do semicha, then it's as if you don't have atonement, but you do have atonement. Now, this is confusing language because it's contradicting itself. If you missed doing semicha, that's a mishiareh misvah, you consider it as an extra credit, but you said, I don't care about that, and you don't do semicha, then it's telling you, well, if you did semicha, you get atonement eventually when you do when you sprinkle the blood. But if you didn't do semicha, then you don't achieve atonement, even though actually you do achieve atonement. It's like you don't achieve atonement. Now, we want to explain what this means. My lab, dechiper. So how do we explain this contradiction? When it says vechiper, that you do get atonement, that is aseh dekodem hafrasha. Anything before the designation, this korban will fully atone for. That everybody agrees. Lo kiper aseh desemicha davale aseh lachar delachar hafrasha. And when he says you don't get atonement, that is talking about the missed opportunity for doing semicha, because that is a mitzvat aseh that one missed out on, violated after the designation. And therefore we can learn from here that just like semicha, which is a mitzvat aseh after designation, you don't get atonement for with the blood, so too any mitzvat aseh that one violates after the designation, before the blood, it will not atone for. That is a proof that, no, you don't get atonement for any misvat aseh violated after the designation. Amar Rava, aseh desmicha ka'amart, shane hatam, dekol kama de la shachit ba'amod usmich ka'eh. Emat ka'have aseh, lachar shechita, la kami ba'yalan. Rava says, no, I don't agree. This is not a good proof. You're bringing your proof from the misvat aseh of putting your hand on the animal. That's different, because when do you violate that mitzvah aseh? That semicha, there's a whole range of time that you could do semicha, and it's not at one moment that you have to do semicha. So therefore, when do you violate? As long as you didn't do shechita, it is standing and ready to do semicha. So it's something that you can do at some point after the designation and before the shechita. Now, so when is the misvat aseh? When do you violate the misvat aseh? Only once you slaughter it. Now that you slaughtered it, you can't do semicha anymore. Oh, you missed your opportunity. You violated a misvat aseh. So all we can learn from this example is that from shechita on, a missed opportunity of a misvat aseh, it will not atone for. But that wasn't our question. The question was not, if you did a misvat aseh after shechita, before the blood was sprinkled, do you get kapara? No, for sure you don't get kapara. That we're not asking about. And that's what this example, semicha, is violated at the point of shechita. Once you do shechita, now you violated it. But 1 second before shechita, you could do semicha. And that wasn't our question. Our question was something that you violate after the consecration. That's what we want to know. So if there was an opportunity for a misvat aseh at some point after the consecration, that was the question, and this does not address that question. Amar le Rav Huna bar Yehuda le Rava, ema kiper gavra, lo kiper kamesh shemaya.
Rav Huna bar Yehuda says, actually, this baraita is a good proof and answers the question in the positive that yes, a korban olah can give atonement even after the consecration. And I'm going to read this kipped and lo kipped combination. Read it as follows. Kipped is for the person, the individual who violated those misvot aseh, he gets atonement, he passes. And when it says lo kipped, that means he does not get atonement before heaven. In other words, he gets atonement, but barely. He didn't do it in the proper way because he didn't do semicha. It's like a student that gets a 65 in a class. Did he pass?
Yes, he passed. He doesn't have to retake the class. But is the teacher happy? Not very happy. Did the student really learn the lessons? Not really, just barely passed. And so that's the idea here. You brought this atonement, you brought this korban olah. It'll atone for everything. It'll atone for everything, including the semicha itself. But the fact that you missed out on the semicha, so then that detracts from its level of atonement before heaven, but technically it does atone, and you wouldn't have to bring another one. And here's a proof that Rav Huna bar Yehuda brings, that we have a similar phrase, kiper, lo kiper, in another context, and that's what it means there also. Mi lo tenan, a Mishnah Masechet Negaim, vanotar b'Hashem asher al kaf vegomer lechaper alav lifnei Hashem. When someone who's a mesorah comes to become pure, so we take special oil, and the Kohen puts it on his right ear and his right thumb, and the rest of it, he pours that oil, he puts it in the priest's hand, and he puts it on the head of the one who was mesorah, and he gets atonement. Okay, good. That's what the pasuk says. Now, what does this mean? Im natan kiper, v'im lo natan lo kiper. Diber Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, you see that it says here that the placement of the oil on his head achieves atonement. Only if you did that part of the ritual is he atoned. If not, he doesn't get atonement. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri omer, she'areh mitzvahen, ben nitan ben shelo nitan kiper, ma'alin alav ki'ilu lo kiper. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri disagrees with Rabbi Akiva. And he says that the placing of the oil on his head is extra, and not an essential part of the mitzvah, but a side point. You should do it. And therefore, whether you put it on his head or whether he doesn't put the oil on his head, he achieves atonement. It's okay. He doesn't have to bring it. He doesn't have to do it again. However, the pasuk makes it as if he didn't get atonement. What do you mean, as if? Well, did he get atonement or did he not get atonement? Does he have to do the ritual again or not? Ki'ilu lo kiper. So that's what the Gemara asks about that Mishnah. What do you mean, as if he didn't get atonement? If you think that he really doesn't get atonement, he has to bring another korban, another offering of oil. But you just said that whether they poured the oil on his head or not, he gets kapara. So obviously he doesn't have to bring it again. Ela kiper gavra, lo kiper kamesh shemaya, hachaname kiper vechule. Rather, it must mean over here in the negaim that the person achieved atonement. He doesn't have to come back again. He passed the class. He doesn't have to go to summer school. But in terms of heaven, did he do it the best way? Not really, just barely. So since that's what it means there, that's what it means here also. And therefore, if we apply that here, and this person, he consecrated the animal, then he missed out on a misvot aseh, or he didn't do semicha, says he gets atonement. It's not the best kind, because you missed out on semicha, but still it atones, and so that we can learn from this baraita that yes, you do get atonement, and isn't that a good proof? However, the Gemara rejects this and says, Hatam name kiper matan behonot, lo kiper matenot harosh. Maybe when Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says you have atonement but not atonement, it means you do get atonement. That's for the placement of the oil on the mesorah's thumb and toe, because that you did first. Okay, you did that, check mark. But then, if the Kohen did not put it on his head, then he does not atone for that part. And you have to bring another korban, another offering of oil, and put it on his head. So that's what he means. He means he did part of it, but not part of it. And in that sense, he would disagree with Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, if you didn't put the oil on his head, you got to start all over again and put it on his thumb, again, his ear and thumb again, and then put it on his head. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said, no, you did the thumb and the ear. Okay, that's checked. You don't have to do that again, but you're going to have to bring another oil offering to put it on his head. And so therefore, since we could read the Mishnah that way, therefore this phrase, achieved atonement, not achieved atonement, doesn't mean that he achieved atonement but barely, but rather it means, no, he achieved part of it, but the other part he didn't do at all, and has to bring it again. And so therefore there's no proof from this Mishnah
about what the phrase means in that baraita. So let's try to bring an answer from yet another source of baraita, Tashema. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kibsei aseret lamahen ba'in. Rabbi Shimon asks the kevasim, the lambs that one brings on Shavuot, to accompany the shtei halechem. Shtei halechem is the main thing because you were celebrating the wheat, but along with the wheat loaves, we also bring 2 kevasim. Why are they brought? Now we say, Kibsei aseret shelamim ninu. What do you mean, why are they brought? You're asking like what sin they're brought for? They're not brought as a sin. It's a korban shelamim to help celebrate the shtei halechem. So that's not a good question. No, what we meant to ask, Rabbi Shimon's asking, why are the goats brought? There are 2 goats that are brought on Shavuot as korban hatat. One of them is mentioned in Sefer Vayikra. It says you have to bring a goat. And then again in Parashat Pinchas, it says on Shavuot you have to bring a goat. Now, you could have read this as they're both referring to the same goat, just Vayikra and Devari and Bemidbar. They're each telling us that on Shavuot you bring a goat, and this is repeating itself. But that's not the way Midrash understands it, but rather that's referring to, the Vayikra is referring to one goat, and Bemidbar is referring to another goat. So you have to actually bring 2 goats as korban hatat on Shavuot. So now that makes sense, this question. Rabbi Shimon says, why bringing 2 korban hatat? You bring 1 korban hatat. Why bring it any at all? The answer is al tumat mikdash ve'kadashav. It's for the defiling of the temple and sacrificial foods. If someone is tameh and they walk into the mikdash, they bring tuman to the mikdash, or they're tameh and they eat sacrificial food. If someone does that by mistake, then this korban will be a coverall for any time that happened since the last korban hatat that one brought for this purpose. So that's what it's for. Now, Nizrak damo shel rishon, sheni lamakarev. That explains why I need 1. But why do I need the second one? So we sprinkled the blood of the first sa'ir lehatat. So now we covered everything. Since the last time we brought, we atoned for this, we're good. Why do you have to bring a second one? And the answer is al tumashe ur'a ben zelazeh. Rabbi Shimon answers, to atone for anything that happened in between. You brought the first sa'ir at 11 o'clock. You brought the next sa'ir at 12 o'clock. Maybe in between, someone tameh came into the mikdash. Oh, we want to sweep it again and get rid of that sin. According to this, really, it would be fitting for Israel to bring a korban like this at any point, because you never know. It could be at any day, at any time, someone brought tum'ah into the mikdash, and therefore you'd want to take care of it as soon as possible. However, the Torah, the Pesukim, spared this obligation, because otherwise we're going to go crazy. You're going to have a line of se'irim out the door, and bring one every hour, every half hour, every 5 minutes. So there's no end to this. So therefore the Torah is merciful and says, okay, just bring one on these special occasions, and that's sufficient. And here it happens to be 2, kind of back to back, but maybe there's an hour or 2 in between, and so that's good. On the holidays, a lot of people there. We want to bring an extra one. All right, that's what Rabbi Shimon teaches. Now, here is the proof. Now, this is a case of a aseh violated after its designation, and yet it does bring atonement. Because these 2 animals, let's assume, were designated at the same time. It makes sense. The Shavuot is coming. Oh, we're going to need 2 goats. So they probably went to the pen, and they went and they got 2 goats. And sometime, maybe at 6 a.m., for example, they designated these 2 goats are going to be the se'irim for today, the korban hatat. And then later on, they brought one at 11 a.m. and sprinkled its blood, and that will atone for any problem of tumat mikdash v'kadashav that happened from before then. Good. Now at 12 o'clock you're bringing another one, and Rabbi Shimon says, what do you bring another one at 12 for? It's to atone for anything that happened between 11 and 12. Well, anything happened between 11 and 12 is certainly going to be after the consecration. This is called the misvat aseh, even though it's actually for misvat lo ta'aseh, of don't bring tuman to the mikdash, because there is a misvat aseh involved, that if someone realizes all of a sudden they're on the Temple Mount and they say, oh, I'm tameh, there is a misvat aseh to leave right away. And if they don't leave right away, then they are violating a mitzvat aseh. So there is in fact a mitzvat aseh involved here. And yet Rabbi Shimon says that you can bring another one after the consecration in order to take care of any
problems of this misvat aseh between 11 and 12. So this is a proof that a korban, in this case a korban chatat, but the same would be true for a korban olah, that a korban can atone for a violated misvat aseh, even if the misvat aseh was violated after the consecration of the animal. Isn't that a good proof? And the answer is, yes, it would be a good proof if we knew that they consecrated both animals at the same time. Here we're dealing with a case where they did not designate them at the same time. For whatever reason, they don't have to. They designated one korban, they went through the pen and they found one, and they said this is going to be a sa'ir lehatat, and they did that at 6 a.m. Another one, they went and they said, found another one and designated it at 8 a.m. So for that period, now they sacrificed them later on, but they only will atone for any misvat aseh that was violated before the consecration. So the first one will deal with anything that was done before 6 a.m., from days before, from weeks before. And the second one will deal with any violation that happened between 6 and 8. And so that's what it's talking about. This pasuk is assuming that there's a distinction between the time that each was consecrated. But the Gemara challenges this. Wait, are we going to come and stand and demand of the pasuk that this is only if you designate them at different times? What do you mean? You're going to make we make okimtas all the time on a mishnah. Oh, the rabbi, when they said this to mishnah, they meant in this case. But who are you to go tell a pasuk, oh, you pasuk, you only apply in a case when they designate them at different times. If they designate at the same time, then you're right, you wouldn't need it. What, you're going to tell the pasuk then you don't need it in that case? So this is not a good answer. Amar Papa, korbanot tzibur ka'amar, Papa has a different answer. And he says, are you talking about communal offerings? Shane korbanot tzibur. Dele betin kamatne alehen. Kid Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, Damar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, korbanot tzibur, sakin moshachtan lema shehen. When it comes to communal offerings, it's the thought of the Bet Din is a condition about them. As Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, as he said, that when it comes to communal offerings, the slaughtering knife designates it for what it is. In other words, for an individual korban, the individual has to go and designate a certain animal and say, I'm going to use this for eichat, I'm going to use this for an olah. But when it comes to communal offerings, the Bet Din, they don't have to say it explicitly, it's implicit, and they stipulate, they say what animal will be used for what. Eventually, once you slaughter it, then the Bet Din says, oh, this one that you're slaughtering, yes, we decided when and what it is going to be. And therefore, the Bet Din implicitly says, when you slaughter these se'irim on Shavuot, the Bet Din implicitly makes a decree, makes a stipulation that one of them will be from a certain time and the other one will be designated from a certain time. And therefore, there is no problem of saying to the pasuk, oh, you have to be earlier than that one. Yes, we can do that because the Bet Din builds it into their system because that's how communal offerings work. Amar le Rav Yosef bered Rav Shemuel le Rav Papa. Umi'it le Rabbi Shimon le Bet Din matne alehen. Ha'amar Ravidi bar Abin, Amar Rav Amram, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Temidim shelo husrechu lasibor, ledibre Rabbi Shimon en niftin temimim, ledibre chachamim niftin temimim. Now, Rav Yosef, the son of Rav Shemuel, says, I disagree with you, Rav Papa. Rav Papa, you said that the Bet Din will make a stipulation regarding the time of designation, and they can say the time of designation will be right when it's slaughtered. And therefore, one is slaughtered at 11 a.m. and one is slaughtered at 12 a.m., so the designations will be at different times. And that's why you need both of them for that in-between time. But in fact, the designations, one was at 11 and one is at 12, were at the same time, or a minute before it's slaughtered. And therefore, there's no proof from here that the atonement can be effectuated after designation. So Rav Papa was rejecting this proof from Rabbi Shimon, and he said that, no, a designation, only until designation can it atone, but any sin that's done after designation, or violation misvat aseh is done after designation, it does not atone for. Rav Yosef says, I disagree disagree with your reading. And he's going to bring a couple of reasons. Number one, what you said about Rabbi Shimon is not, what you said over here, that the Bet Din makes a designation, is not true for Rabbi Shimon. Does Rabbi Shimon think that the understanding of the Bet Din makes a stipulation, and therefore it is consecrated whenever they say it's consecrated, and that will be with the slaughtering? Rav Idi bar Avin said, name of Avram, who said name of Rabbi Yitzchak, who said name of Rabbi Yochanan, that the regular daily offerings that were not needed anymore. We have a whole bunch of animals that were set aside for the Korban Tamid. And now we have all the Korban Tamids we need, and there's leftover animals. What are you going to do with them? According to Rabbi Shimon, you cannot redeem them while they're unblemished. But according to Chachamim, you can redeem them while unblemished. What does that mean? According to Chachamim, they say that we do make the stipulation of Bet Din, and Bet Din says a stipulation. These animals that we have over here, you're planning to use them for Korban Tamid. Great. Okay, so therefore Korban Tamid. If in the end you see we have too many animals, we don't need them all for Korban Tamid, well then the stipulation will kick in and say, okay, you don't need them anymore, then you can use them for something else. You could redeem it even though it's not blemished, and you can use the animal for another type of Korban, because Chachamim say that the Bet Din does make a stipulation. Rabbi Shimon, however, says no. Once you had in mind, designated that this animal is going to be for Korban Tamid, it can only be used for Korban Tamid, and the fact that you don't need it, well, now you have to wait till it gets a blemish, and only then you can redeem it and use the money for something else. So you see that Rabbi Shimon does not have this principle of that the Bet Din designates things, and therefore we can revive the proof that we had before, that the pasuk says that you're going to bring two animals, and you never know when you're going to bring the animals. It could very likely be that you're going to designate them at the same time, both at 6 a.m. And so why do you need two? Well, one will atone for everything done till 11, the other one will atone for anything done till 12 when they are slaughtered and sprinkled. And so that means between 11 and 12, which is way after the designation, it will atone for all those things. And so now, by rejecting Rav Papa, we revive the proof that we had before, that in fact a korban that's done after designation can atone for mitzvot aseh that were violated from the time of the consecration until the time of the blood offering. And not only that, that is, we revive that proof, and we have yet another proof. Ve'od. Ha be'amineh Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked the following question of Rabbi Zera. Se'ireh aseret shekibel daman b'shnei chosot v'nizrak damo shel rishon sheni lama hu ba. Let's say you had two goats, the korban chatat for Shavuot, and you slaughtered at them at the same time, and you received the blood in 2 cups at the same time, and then one of them you threw onto the mizbeach. So now that achieves atonement for all mitzvat aseh. What do you need the second one for? Al tumah she'ura ben zrika shel zeh lazeh. And the answer was, for any tumah, the Bizara answered, for any tumah that happened between the sprinkling of this blood and the sprinkling of the blood of the second cup, which might only be a few minutes in between. But yeah, maybe somebody walked into the mikdash tameh during those very few minutes and didn't leave in time. And so yes, it's required for that. Ad kan lami ba'ele ela aseh delachar shechita, aval aseh delachar hafrasha lakim kami ba'ale. Now look, we can learn a lot even just from the question of Rabbi Yirmiyah. He's only asking, he's only asking about what happens after shechita. This blood that is after shechita, and now it's a few minutes apart because one was sprinkled a little earlier, one sprinkled a little bit later. What do we need them for? Can you atone for sins that happened after shechita? That's his question. But he doesn't even bother asking about what about mitzvot aseh that were violated after the time of consecration. From the time of consecration until shechita, he's assuming for sure those can be atoned for, even though it's after consecration, those are atoned for. His only question was, you did shechita, but you didn't yet do zerikah. Can you atone for those things? And Rabbi Zera, in fact, answered yes, but even from the question, you can see that he's assuming, yes, it's okay. However, we reject this final proof from Rabbi Yirmiyah's answer, because Dilma, im timse
lomar ka'amar. Maybe Rabbi Yirmiyah was asking the question in the form of, even if you say. In other words, he's not sure that a korban can atone for violations of mitzvot aseh after consecration. He's not sure about that. But the way he asked the question here is assuming that even if you say that it could atone for mitzvot aseh after consecration, from consecration till shechita, how about, if you say yes to that, how about after shechita, between shechita and the sprinkling of the blood? How about that? That was his question. But his question was saying even if, but he didn't really know about consecration also. From the fact that Rabbi Yirmiyah asked the question in this way, is that's not necessarily a proof for an answer. However, we still have the previous proof from Rabbi Shimon that, in fact, according to that, yes, indeed, one can bring a korban olah, and even if you designated it earlier, but you bring it later, it will atone also for any misvot aseh that were violated even after the consecration, from the time of consecration until the time of shechita. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.